right. Welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 172. It's been quite the week. Sorry about the delay there. I was very busy last week. I was traveling through traveling through California. Ended up getting a staph infection somehow on the way. So that was a lot of fun. So just getting back to the realm of the living. So we didn't have time to book a guest this week. So and Marty and I will be teaching on Thursday. So I think we'll just do a quick chime in on Thursday. But Marty and I are thinking it'd be cool to do a cannabis 101 class today and just take some other Q&A questions. We had a lot of really awesome feedback from last week's Q&A and or not last week, last episode or two ago. We did a Q&A and people seem to really like that. So I figured we'd do that again. And yeah. So how's it going? We also have Marty.
Well, just up and down, I guess. It's nice to be building stuff, but it's been, I don't know, it's been weird. Like, they lost my Hydroton for like a week and a half. Nobody knew where the fuck it was, and that's annoying. So it turned out I bought it, and then it comes freight shipping because I'm buying a shitload of it, obviously. And so they had, eventually what I found out, shipping company. So nobody knew what the fuck I was talking about, and then they had to get involved, and then they were just going to cancel it, and then I was like, well, shit, now don't have time to get more media. And so but then they called back like 20 minutes after they were getting ready to cancel it, and said they found it and figured out what happened, but it was a different freight shipping company was the one that was actually doing it, and the wrong one got attached to my order, and so they tracked it down. Anyway, that was annoying. Then I had a bunch of, for you guys that have been watching in the Aquaponic Cannabis Growers group, I've been building the flower system, and so I got the liner in, and it looked like it had been damaged in shipping a little bit also. So like I kind of lost like the first 8 feet off the roll because somebody poked a hole in it with something in shipping. So, not that it's 95 or 100-foot roll or something like that. So it's not that big a deal, but you're like, oh, well, I'm 8 feet short. It's a good thing I have extra. And then got the whole fish tank lined and got everything into that. And it was going okay so far, but it's just been like one thing after another. Oh, and then the plywood that got delivered in order to line it. So I built a frame, and then I put plywood around the frame before I put in the PVC liner, or the Durascrim liner, or whatever the hell it's called. And so the plywood that showed up had fucking black mold all over it. Like one side had been wet, and it was still wet when it got here. And I didn't realize they delivered it on Thursday, and it was really nice weather, so I didn't think anything of it. And I didn't look at it right when they delivered it, and I saw it later. So then I had to get them to come back out, and they were they were okay about it, like they replaced it. But I mean, who wants to fucking put in plywood that's covered in black mold? Like,
no one.
Yeah, that shit shouldn't happen. And they, like, even though they replaced it, they were kind of dicks about it. Like, they wanted me to come down and get it. I'm like, well, the reason I had you deliver it in the first place is because it doesn't fit very good in my truck. I got a short bed and 8-foot sheets of plywood, and I had a bunch of shit to do anyway. So, other than that, it's just like, in addition to trying to build the system, I'm trying to get everything set up for the class. So I had to go pick up the projector and the chairs and the table, and get out the projector screen and get it hung up and all that. So it's just been like one thing after another, and I haven't been feeling good either. I know you guys talked about that a little bit, but I've had a head cold and been sneezing and coughing. So it's just, it's nice to make progress, but it just feels like everything has an issue. Like, okay, we got to, like, building the tank was really like the frame was about the only thing that didn't. I only fucked up one little part of it, and that I was all right with. So that wasn't, and it was only my fault. I guess that's the other thing. It's like, if it's my fault, that's one thing. But when I'm, it's just shipping or somebody else's random crap, and they can't, like, how do you not know what shipping company you sent something through, and or even be able to figure it out? Like once, like I think it was supposed to be here on the 3rd, so it'll finally get here tomorrow, 13 days late. And after by like the 5th, I'm calling him like, hey, what's going on? Oh, well, we'll look into it. It'll take 5 to 8 business days, which I thought they were just saying that, but no, really, it did take that long. So yeah, it's just been like one thing after another, but it's good. I'm really excited for the class. I think we're gonna have a good turnout, and it's gonna be fun. I've been going through the slide deck, and just being able to put literally everything in, like we talked about for this class, is it's a lot more fun as opposed to going through and trying to deciding what needs to go and what doesn't need to go. So it's sort of like shooting the extended version. It is like the 4-hour epic Lord of the Rings version of our class. So it's pretty exciting. So just pretty much all just, other than being under the weather, just prepping for class and trying to get stuff going. Lots of coffee. What about you, Steve?
Oh, I've been working on all kinds of stuff. All right, I won't go last this time. I've been cooking up a storm, working on the project in Africa, just getting ready to launch into Zimbabwe, which is going to be a lot of fun. Just trying to figure out what date, finalizing some stuff on getting some seed into the country, getting the paperwork for that together, working on SOPs for some of the stuff, and just find all the unfun bullshit paperwork stuff that no one likes to do, but you have to get done. So that's been going on. And then what happened here? Is everyone else still there?
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
I'm still here, but my video went out. There, it's back. It's back.
Yeah, I just turned off my camera for a second. I'm trying to install.
Yeah, so just working on that, and then working on just updating the class. I have an all new section on viruses in this class, which would be cool to cover. Got lots of pictures from this year. Just adding some more insects and diseases that I've seen this year that I haven't seen before. Always try to document that in the classes. And just trying to fill out some of the stuff that maybe we hadn't touched on enough, or I thought wasn't fleshed out enough in the class, and getting that all ready for this week. And then just recovering from the staph infection, and really kicked my ass, and the speed at which it raced down my arm kind of was a little bit scary. So and then they give you pretty strong antibiotics for it, which are never fun, but don't really have much of an option at the moment. So just dealing with that, and then just working on a couple of other projects, just helping out 1 or 2 people in Oklahoma, and working with went out to go see the Need to Grow, which was pretty cool. Cory Booker was there. There was a bunch of other celebrities there. That was kind of neat, just to see people that give a shit from the government. Not endorsing him or anything, just thought it was nice to actually see someone from the government educating themselves on any level of the regenerative movement, which was cool. And then
being there.
Yeah, and then just tearing through California, popping by, seeing a bunch of old friends, seeing the guys from Spectrum King, seeing a bunch of the homies down in LA, and then a bunch of people up in San Francisco area. So, and just doing the thing and getting the business stuff done, and then trying not to die, basically.
Yeah, staph infections are no joke. So I'm glad you feel like you're going to be okay, because that could be That could be, yeah.
Oh
bad.
yeah. No, I just taking my internals and then putting mullein oil on it every 3 hours. And it seems to be working real well. So just need to keep up with the meds.
So that was from a bug? A pet, didn't you say you got bit? I saw something
I don't
online.
know. See, it looks that's what the doctor thought it was, but my father had a theory maybe it came from an airport tray. And
Ah,
that's entirely possible too, so who knows. But it looks like an insect bite in two separate places, so on my knuckle and on my palm. So, but it's pretty crazy. And then other than that, just working with a couple of people on trying to secure some genetics and just securing some of the different things like security contracts and just some of the other things you have to do when you're getting this kind of stuff going. And yeah, other than that, just getting some cool guests lined up. We're gonna have some cool lawyers come on the show and talk to us about what they do. And it's a really cool presentation by the guy from California Micro Turbine about using turbines for your cannabis operations. A bunch of other cool stuff. So it was interesting week last week. What about you, Mr. Green Jeans?
Hey, wow, yeah. Well, I had a great time hanging out with you last week. That was fun.
Yeah,
We got to go out to dinner. We got to hot box the the van.
Yep.
Nice.
That was fun. And and the hot tip of the month or the year possibly was you telling me to get those persimmilus mites predators for my spider mite. I had gotten complacent with them. I figured, oh, I keep them pretty well beat down with the regular water dips. And, when I'm doing that, it's fun to visit with the plants and do other things with them and things like that. I'm noticing now that the mites, now that I'm not doing any water dips anymore, I mean, they wiped, I don't even know. I could have had 2 different kinds of spider mites too. I don't even know. I mean, it's been so long since I got in there with the microscope and took a look. But I did take some videos when they first came of the predators, because the first batch they sent me, about half of them were dead, and the company was really nice, and they re-upped and sent me another batch, and the second batch was much better. And I got in there with my phone and the little 60X thing to microscope attachment on the photograph, and took a couple of movies of them, because I had done that before to show those guys that, to show them that half of them were dead. But when the new ones, boy, they're fast, and you could barely follow them with the video. You can't, you have to. They're like running along the rim of the little jar that they're coming out, and they're just like speeding along. They're like, so you can imagine they must just run up on the mites. And it's like wolves or something like that. They move, 10 times the speed of a regular mite. Anyway, that was a great tip, Steve. Thank you very much. And anybody else, if you're having problems with spider mites, boy, predators are absolutely the way to go. I knew this. I'd done it a couple times before. Last time was maybe 20 years ago. They were more
expensive. When you find the one that fits really well in your environment, I feel like
exactly.
Make a difference for sure.
That's exactly it. And apparently they must be happy, because, and I'm sure they haven't wiped them completely. Man, I literally cannot see any damage at all. But they must be still there. Otherwise, what would the persimmilus guys be eating, right? So they must be striking a balance. But that balance is, as far as I can tell, the mites are just beat down. If there's there at all, they're beat down.
It does take a while, but eventually they can eliminate them. Like, especially if their population doesn't drop off too much from starving, because as they eat their food, it disappears, right? So,
exactly.
So it just kind of depends on where it falls in that population thing, like how many, and how thoroughly they are covered throughout your, like if you have a canopy or multiple plants or whatever.
Yes.
You know, if you've got a really thick canopy, sometimes it can be really difficult because you'll have little hidden spots all over the place that you know, that they gotta get into in order to eat them. So it kind of depends. When you have a large population that they're eating at first, and they're, you know, they don't move around so much. They don't need to. They got food right there, and then as food declines, they'll move around a little more. But if they can't reach new food by the time they die off, then they start reproducing or stop reproducing, and it can become difficult. So the little pouches that come with they come with food inside of them can help extend out, and that's kind of what they're for, is give that breeding pouch a place where they're it's the right humidity. Most of the time they try to keep those little packets with both food in a decent environment for them to reproduce in, and then you can have them. I think they say, what is it, up to 6 weeks, Steve, on most of them?
So it depends on the species, but yes, up to 6 weeks, I think, with the Swarovski. And there's actually I believe it's a potato mite or a wheat mite or something like that. It's a wheat mold mite or something like that.
It's potato mite usually. So, and then they have usually crumbs of like cornmeal or something like that that they put in there, so that the potato mite can have food, and then the predator can continue feeding on
something to eat.
Yeah, on the mites that won't affect your crop, I guess is the easiest way to put it. Unless you're growing potatoes, I guess maybe that'll be an issue.
I think the last time I got predator mites, they were Californicus or whatever.
So it's real dependent. When you're treating spider mites, it's important that you know what your temperature range is.
Yes.
You know, if you're, say, in Oklahoma, you're going to want to use Californicus because it gets so damn hot and it's so damn humid. You know, that's really what's gonna survive and do a lot better in your grow long term. Whereas if you're in a cooler climate, you know, the Persimilis is going to be much better. You know, but they don't like much above about 84, 85. They also like a little bit higher humidity. And you know, whereas you know, if you're a little bit, you know, kind of in between, you know, you might want to go for a Swarovski eye, or if you think you might have some smaller mites as well, go for a Swarovski eye. You know, so it just depends on, or even a phallus, Fallacis.
Yeah.
You know, even those guys too, imbeciles.
Yeah. So on the Swarovskis, the suggested temperature range is 77 to 85, but they'll remain active down to 60. And the ideal humidity is around 70%. So those are the two key factors: temperature and humidity, and then obviously, you know, whether or not they have food or whatever to continue.
Yeah,
they're amazingly effective.
If you have a period of time during the day where, you know, twice a day where the humidity gets higher, you know, say because of dew or whatever else, that's really what they need to survive. It's that they dry out. You know, so even if you're not meeting those humidity requirements, if you're getting, you know, a short bath or some other spike in humidity over the course of the day that also rehydrate, that can definitely, you know, twice a day, that can, you know, mitigate some of that.
Oh, that's good.
And so the Persimilis, is that how you say it, Steve?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I was
close enough.
Persimilis, yeah.
It has a much wider temperature range. It's from 68 to 90 degrees, and a wider range of relative humidity at 60 to 90%. So it probably moving to that, you know, your Mr. Green Jeans' growing environment is probably, you know, a little bit outside of the target for the other one. And sometimes changing during the times of year. So like, for instance, in the summertime, my growing room usually has, you know, a little bit different temperature swing and slightly higher humidity, I think. I'd have to think about that for a minute. But so it just tends to be a little bit higher. Obviously, I'm trying to control it and keep an eye on my BPD and all that. But depending on the time of year, if your temperature changes very much, and especially outdoors, your temperature is going to change, even in a greenhouse, and obviously adjusting in the time of year for that as well.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I think the first time I got predator mites was probably in the early 80s. And there was like maybe one source to get them, or, you know, there was, and now there's many. And I think the prices are lower. And I think I got more mites for less money too. I mean, I think, or either that was, or it was double the amount. You know, it was supposed to be 1,000 count. I think last time, or the first time I got them, that would have been like late 70s, I think, early 80s.
I've really been digging hover flies lately for fungus gnat treatments. They really kick ass in aquaponics.
Really?
Plus, they're entertaining to watch too.
Huh. Others, you see them out, right? You see them in the wild, kind of. They're the ones that have an amazing ability to hover. Is that why they're called hover flies?
They're like little. They look almost like a sweat bee.
Yeah, like a sweat bee, exactly. Yeah, but they get flying differently, right? They're flying.
Yep.
More. Yeah.
Yeah, but those predator mites really are the best solution for your.
No question about it. No question. I had forgotten how effective they were. I'd gotten complacent. I was like, I don't really mind. You know, I don't really mind the water tips. I was doing other maintenance and playing around with the plants, doing, you know, combining it all together into. It's funny now because they're, you know, like I have to reach in there to pull out all the leaves, you know, drying lower leaves or lower leaves that are dying off or something like that. Instead of just being there to trim the bottom, lollipop the bottoms of the plants and stuff like that. I have to look at them and say, maybe I should pull that plant out and prune it. So I don't need any attention now. It's just great. Anyway, thanks so much, Steve. It was a great tip.
We forgot to mention, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Marty and I are teaching a class Thursday through Sunday. If you're interested, you can find out more information at apmjclass.com. And it's a 4-day commercial aquaponic cannabis class. We cover everything from design, microbes, probiotics, insects, beneficial insects, you know,
licensing,
fish foods. What's that?
Licensing.
Yeah, we go a lot
Business
about
concerns.
trials and tribulations on that stuff. We have a whole section on business, and you know, try to really help you wrap your head around all the different stuff that's involved. Obviously, we can't go through everything, but we try to give you a real good foundation on what you're going to need to get started, or at least, you know, you'll know what you need to hire as far as people to do X, Y, and Z, and how, you know, roughly how much you'll need in staff and all that stuff. So
beneficial insects, just like we just got done talking about. So all that stuff we covered just now. We'll talk about you know, even other insects besides those. Like, actually, I was gonna ask Steve about one that I was reading about, because I took some pictures of it in my front yard. I didn't know what it was and looked it up. Have you ever heard of a bee-like tachinid fly? You know what that is, Steve?
that's a new one for me.
So, and it's interesting too. It's basically a fly that looks like a bee. That's the easiest way to describe it. And there's a number of different variations of them, but particularly the bee-like tachinid fly is interesting because of how it lays its eggs inside caterpillars. So essentially, it will either, depending on the species of tachinid fly, it will either inject the egg directly inside of the caterpillar, or it will lay eggs around a caterpillar that is feeding in hope that it becomes ingested by it. Then the egg hatches inside the caterpillar and eats it from the inside out.
Wow, that's excellent.
That's trippy.
So I was blown away, first of all, because I had no idea what the word here. I'll have to get a picture up and find one, because that's what I was doing. I was taking pictures in my front yard, and so at first I thought it was bees. They were coming into these, you know, late fall flowers to I assumed to pollinate, but after seeing it obviously was not a bee, I'm only assuming it's coming in to get a drink. So here I got some good shots of them here. Let's see if I can do this. All right, can you guys see that? Should be loading, hopefully. No?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, good. Y'all went quiet on me. So that's what it looks like. It basically is a fly that's imitating a bee. And so that's when basically I just took this picture and then I started looking around online to try and figure out what it was. And if you go look it up, that's what you find, and just reading about it. So, I mean, I guess that explains why I haven't seen any caterpillars around here since I moved here. And we have a number of plants in the front yard that they would love to munch on. So I was a little curious as to why they weren't there, but these things are everywhere. So maybe that's an indication. So I'm not sure. Obviously, if these guys are everywhere, that means they have a pretty high population, which means there are caterpillars around for it to lay eggs in. So I'm not sure exactly how that balance is struck, but right now they're nowhere around my yard or my plants, so that's a good sign. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, so I wanted to share that with you guys.
In reading about them, did you find that there's any kind of particular region or kind of environment they like to live in or are indigenous to?
No, I did not look at that. I did, once I found the information on caterpillars, I kind of just focused on that because obviously that's that. And I don't think that's anything that you could particularly buy. I mean, I guess I didn't look, but I wouldn't think that's an insect that you could go out and buy. But it brings up an important topic because a lot of times you're going to have more success fostering the predators that already live in your area, similar to kind of what we do with microbes when we're doing like IMO and stuff like that. The microbes that live in that area have evolved in that area and are going to do well because they are already there. And it's kind of the same for predators. So if you live in an area like I do, and obviously now I know that I have these tachin flies around, making sure that I take care of those flowers that they're coming in to drink water off of and drinking the dew off of, or even just maybe using a sprayer to water them so they're wet every morning. So yeah, I think that there are other ways to encourage the good guys more than the bad guys, and really kind of outcompete them on an insect level in the same way that we do, or we think about on a microbe level.
So you mentioned that you want to make sure you keep the flowers or plants that they're living on or surviving on. Is there any particular plant? What was that plant you showed us in that picture? What was that?
What is this called?
Just wondered if you had plants like that, if that would draw them at all.
Yeah, I would think so, and they definitely seem to flock to any of the ones that are holding water. Like, obviously it looks like it's here getting pollen, just like a bee would be, but when you take a closer look, it's drinking. There's little water droplets all over this flower, and that's essentially what it's coming in for. In all those little pockets, they get all built up, whether it's dew or these ones actually get hit by a sprayer that I have close by. It's just like a mister, and so that's part of the reason these are wet every morning and they have a place to come in and drink. So I would think even an insect-friendly type bath would be something that you could do as well to get them to come in. Any flower that's going to hold a little bit of water. And I'll have to see what the name of this is. The lady that planted all these, she put it somewhere on here, but I can't find it just yet. So when I come across it, I'll let you know. But I think anything that's going to allow them to hold water, and really, it probably requires more research. I'm sure that I can look up more and learn more about it, like you're talking about. What does it like? And are there other plants that I could plant that would be better? I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, thanks. And I'll look forward to that information.
Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody in chat knows. Anybody know what these flowers are? let me know.
Wait, put the picture back up.
Okey-dokey. There you go. Anybody?
Almost looks like clover. No, it's like red clover or something like that, isn't it?
I don't think
Looks
it's clover.
in the onion family.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say first. Actually, onion, something like the top of an onion.
Every time I post pictures on my Facebook account, the the lady that we bought this place from is always posting what all the flowers are called. So as soon as I get done scrolling to it, I will let you know what she said. But yeah, I do think that either way, whatever insect it is that you are trying to encourage its growth is just research about it. What is it like? Try to make sure to keep those things around. And so in a depending on your environment, that could mean a lot of different things.
Yeah, some people that they actually I was looking at some of them go after monarch caterpillars, and there's a lot of people who are trying to promote their are growing kinds of milkweeds and things like that and trying to promote the monarch butterflies. And I'm not sure about whether it's this same species, because there's apparently a couple other of these bee-like tachnid flies. It's so cool, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, yeah, very neat. Pretty cool. Yeah, and I was just going to say that, that some of them, I guess, go after so the monarch people call it the dreaded bee-like tachnid fly. Oh my God. So for them, you know what I mean? Because I was like trying to promote my monarch butterfly. So that's exactly what you were just saying, is that depending on what you need, what you're trying to get in your garden.
Yeah, what is your perspective? Obviously, if you're trying to protect caterpillars, then you don't want to keep these guys around. But if you're growing anything, then usually people are not too welcoming of caterpillars anyway. So
yeah, no, caterpillars are a humongous problem with cannabis. I know they are up north too, and down south as well. The green ones that you can't see, the only way you can really spot them is lying down underneath the plant for 5 or 10 minutes, which is fun anyway, and just kind of looking up into the leaves, and eventually you'll see them, but they're like amazingly hard to even see. So I'm sure these guys, these tachnid flies, are much better at finding their food than we are at seeing them. Because a lot of times on cannabis, that's why I'm always telling people around August, September, down south here, and I think up north too, you're probably going to get a wave of caterpillars. And
this is kind of cool, because Ryan was telling me the other day he was out there, suddenly had been swarmed by caterpillars out there on the hemp plants.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here picking off caterpillars. So we've been doing some research about what we should do about that. I'm going to have to see what else.
They get
so the best thing, hands down, Aureus, and then assassin bugs and rove beetles, because they rove from plant to plant, and all of them can prey on them until they get a decent size. After that, then you're pretty much stuck with assassin bugs and mantises and Aureus as far as things that can take them down.
Cool. I hope Ryan's listening. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll cover all the different pests that you're going to run into on a kind of common basis. Marty and I have both also done a lot of consulting on hemp farms as well the last 2 years, and really gotten to know a lot of different of the other issues you run into in which insects really kind of take off when you do large scale outdoor and large scale greenhouse. It's a little bit different. You're starting to see septoria and some new viruses from insects biting one plant than the other, and just some new stuff that really, you know, it's not in the books that you find on the shelf at the bookstore for sure.
So apparently it's called sedum, I guess, or sedum. The flower.
Yeah, that's a big family. Sedum, they're like succulent plants, but now that you mention it, it does look like the flower of some kind of sedum.
Yeah, that's what she said it is, and she planted
Yeah.
it. So I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm going with her.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what it's called, and she's really big on succulents, so that doesn't surprise me. I'm seeing some other ones in that same family here. I guess the stone crop.
Yeah, exactly. Stone. I was just going to say stone crop is one of the common ones.
The stone plant's really good plant to grow in your garden. It's a good last resort plant or like survival plant. Also has some medicinal properties. I don't remember the exact medicinal properties, but I know it has some.
Yeah, that's right. Cool.
It grows natively.
Yeah, that's what it's called, and it definitely does a good job of holding water for all types of insects. And I see a number of plants on there all the time, and again, especially later in fall, like right now, or even the last couple of weeks, you know, it's been pretty heavy caterpillar season. So, you know, you're going to want something to draw them into that area. So if you have, you know, some of the later fall flowers still available where other ones are dying off, you're going to be, you know, more of an advantage at bringing them into your area. So that's what I would suggest.
Very cool.
Does anyone from chat have any insect questions, especially around beneficial insects? The other thing here, I'll read off some of the details here, since I have the official press release today. This is what I've been waiting for to actually tell you guys. So we're launching with 750 acres in Zimbabwe. We also have 100 acres set aside for a processing site as well. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. I mean, I've known and I've already said congratulations, but officially and publicly, congratulations.
Yeah. And then we have we'll be expanding into South Africa and Malawi in short order. We're just finalizing our stuff there. We'll have one of the first 3 licenses in Malawi as well. And then in South Africa, we already have our permit. We're just waiting on our license. Permits let you get going. License lets you distribute internationally. So we're just waiting on our final paperwork there, but everything is all systems go. So it's a lot of fun getting this all going, and you know, really making a big difference over there, doing the nurseries and aquaponics, you know, helping get food to people that need protein, and at the same time helping get revenue over there. You know, we're going to have a way to help pay the farmers a much better price than they would normally get paid, and most of the other opportunities they'll have in the cannabis industry there, and you know, distribute a lot of stuff into Europe because they don't have enough land. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and certainly one of the bigger operations I've worked with in a long time, so, or ever for that matter. Yeah. But anyways, that's what I'll be up to, and there will be some changes to the show. Like I said before, I think we're going to move to a live only on Tuesday or Thursday. I haven't decided which. Hey, the kitty says hi too. We're going to move to a live show one day a week and a recorded show one day a week with you know, more special guests, and you know, maybe a little bit more interview focused, more akin to Shango. Shout out to Shango, by the way. A couple of days ago, I had my interview posted with him. I did an interview with him. It's about an hour and a half long. You know, about half an hour longer than his normal interviews, just like our show. So definitely check that out and support Shango. And a really great interview. It was a lot of fun with him. We actually ended up recording for like 3 or 4 hours, even though the episode is only like an hour and 20 some minutes. We kept getting off topic and going on to you know, aquarium stuff or just personal interests, and he's such a cool dude. So you know, much love to him and that interview, and yeah, working on some other cool stuff I can't talk about, but we'll have some cool video content of. I'm just not allowed to talk about until we post it. And yeah, just working on all kinds of cool stuff right now, and busy as a bee.
For sure.
What about you? What about you, Roger? How you been? What have you been doing?
Yeah, got to get unmuted here. I'm doing okay. We're working on going to be handing over my paperwork for my hemp license tomorrow to my partner, who's going to turn it over to our investor, and who's got the license, by the way. And we're going to be cleaning up. I'm really excited because we're going to start the cleanup and rejuvenation of my greenhouse operation. So it's more about getting started than how long it'll take, because usually it looks like a freaking mess, but once we get started, we're liable to knock out most of the cleanup tomorrow. If it does, of course, now that we finally got it scheduled to work on Wednesdays until we get it up and online again. Because he's so busy, that's the only day he can make it over. Oh, shoot. I don't know what I lost train of thought. It won't tow. Yeah, it just won't take, it doesn't take that long once you get going. It just looks like a mess. And then once you start digging through it, all you got to do is get that one clear spot. I hate to say it, but mine's overgrown with, and I let it do this for a specific reason, because we like them, but it's overgrown with blackberries and stuff like that. And so I'm going to be cleaning out a lot of blackberries out of there tomorrow, and setting them around the perimeter of the land. And hopefully they'll take hold, because you can't seem to stop them. Well, I don't try to stop them from growing, but they grow everywhere around here. They're like crazy. And I'm lucky to have blackberries and dandelions. So yeah, that's about it for me. We're getting cool finally. The temperatures have dropped to where we're still, they keep saying we're going into the 70s and then it's 80, but next week we're supposed to drop into like the low to mid 60s all day long. So that's going to be kind of nice for a break from this crazy year of heat we had. Went from fall to summer, basically. Last fall, we never had a winter really. And then we went straight, like it was like fall all the way till June. And then it got hotter than the blue blazes of hell. So yeah, that's all we're doing over here. We're just trying to get this thing going with the hemp. We've had a little breakdown at the big farm because of the water quality. So that may be a dead issue, but the owner has several pieces of land. So he's looking in there doing some water testing to see if we can find a more viable piece of land to do the big outdoor operation. So I'm kind of happy though, that shifts the attention to my greenhouse op, and then we're going to have to finish building Ryan's indoor custom grow room. So that's going to be fun too, because for all the years I've been growing, even though I've got a pretty nice little small setup, and it's climate controlled, it's nothing like what we're going to do here, where we're building it from scratch. It's going to be real nice. Can't wait. That's about it for me.
All right.
Very cool.
So I thought we'd cover some of the basic stuff with aquaponic cannabis, particularly for small scale home stuff. First off, does anybody have any questions in chat before we get into that? And then Marty, did you have anything else that you wanted to?
Where is everybody? Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I lost the video again, but I could hear you, so I didn't really care if I could see you or not, because you're just a black screen anyway.
All right. So Marty, I also know that you, so we started this off, I don't even remember what we talked about in the first episode. It's been so damn long. But what are some of the key fundamental things that you've noticed doing aquaponic cannabis, and maybe getting started, that were maybe stood out to you or that you've learned along the way?
Oh, sorry, but I noticed in chat, in our private chat, Marty said he'd be right back. So I don't know if you saw that.
Ah, that figures.
I remember that one thing I was impressed by. It was within 15 minutes, you guys were talking about the dual root zone. That's what you did an intro for about 15 minutes, within 15, 20 minutes. Cause I tell people about going back and watching the first through 15 episodes, but the first episode, you guys get right into it in about 15 or 20 minutes and you go into what the dual root zone is all about. That's what the first episode was about.
Yep, and the dual root zone really is the key to growing any kind of more advanced plant in aquaponics. It gives you that level of control that you simply don't get with other grow methods. It also gives you a huge boost to terpene production against anyone who doesn't. I know there's one or two people out there in the aquaponic cannabis community who say, "Oh, you don't need it." Well, I've never seen any of their terpene and cannabinoid profiles come to within even 5% of ours. It's such a night and day difference. Again, it's not even comparable. This was further reinforced with a great presentation by a gentleman at the Aquaponics Association's conference this year, who had did a bunch of side-by-side work that published a lot of the stuff that I have been NDA'd under from over at Green Relief, and some of the other people I've worked with on direct comparisons using data that he was allowed to share. So that was really cool, and really nice to see that being published out more in the public realm. So yeah, so that's really I guess one of the biggest points. It allows you to have your terrestrial microbes, you have your mycorrhizal fungi, you have your rotifers, your terrestrial arthropods, all your different terrestrial microbes, terrestrial bacteria in the upper half of the root zone. Then you have a layer of burlap in the middle of your pot, and the bottom half with either lava rock or hydrogen. This allows a space for your aquatic microbes and all your aquatic creatures. This allows you to have two completely different biomes in the plant's root system, which allows the plant to have a much wider biodiversity of microbes to pick and choose mineralization from, via its root system. And this also stimulates the immune system in ways of the plant that are otherwise not stimulated. So, for instance, you have fungi and bacteria that it's not normally exposed to. Well, what's the plant going to do when that happens? It's going to produce terpenes and other secondary metabolites and compounds in order to fend off similar type compounds. Well, that's what we're after in cannabis, right? We want more terpenes, more flavonoids, more cannabinoids, and all these defense mechanism essential oils. So by increasing the biodiversity, or in our case, straight up increasing the number of root biomes entirely, this gives you a much better example of and much better way to vaccinate that plant and stimulate that plant to produce much more compounds and really boost that terpene and cannabinoid production. And you simply can't do that in a DWC bed. You can't do that in a media bed. You'll never achieve the terpene and cannabinoid levels that we get with that level of control. You can do all of that living soil stuff that Dr. Elaine Ingham teaches and Chris Trump teaches and Dragonfly Earth teaches. You can do all of that in your soil layer and still do all the wonderful microbial work that we talk about in the aquatic layer at the same time, and really stimulate that plant to really produce the maximum possible amount of terpenes and cannabinoids. And then, honestly, in my opinion, is the way to get the maximum potential out of the genetics of that plant. I can't think of any other way to stimulate that plant's immune system any more than the way that we do. And not only that, but do it in a way that gives us control.
I think that's what sold me on getting on board and working and trying to convert to the dual root zone, was because it was the first time I saw something that made sense to me. And I feel like it is common sense that having that soil layer where you can add amendments you just cannot add to the fish tank, or have it flow through was the big selling point to me, which is basically what you just said in a way,
A guy in the chat, Kevin Kale, in YouTube chat, wants to know, can you use catfish, and do you keep the fish till they die?
You can use catfish. Catfish tend to be a little bit more sensitive to nutrients in the water because they are a scaleless fish. They're also more sensitive if you end up having to medicate them in a hospital system, or if they get sick, they will absorb medications a little bit more readily. So you have to lower the dosing when you actually end up dosing those fish with medications. So you absolutely can run them with catfish. I would say they're not the ideal, but I do enjoy and I honestly recommend putting in 1 to 5 catfish in every system just to keep the system clean. And, they end up at the bottom of the fish tank. They're, even if you have, mid-water fish, them being in the bottom of the fish tank just kicks the fish waste up off the bottom. Any uneaten food just kicks it up just enough so that it ends up in the filter and is properly handled. So that's why I like to have just a couple of bottom feeders, catfish or otherwise, just to maintain overall system cleanliness in any of my fish tanks. Again, just make sure they're appropriately sized to not start eating everything.
Right. So the part of that question was about keeping them till they die, and pretty much that idea is that they're going to get too big at some point, and you either need to eat them or do something with them and have smaller fish, replace them with smaller fish.
Yeah. So most of the time we're rotating fish out between 1 and 3 years, depending on what it is that we're doing. Most of them are 1 to 2 year turnovers, with the exception being maybe sturgeon or a few other fish. We had another question in chat. It says, do you know anything about the microbes used within the product Mammoth P? Is this phosphorus fixating microbe relevant to you aquaponic guys in any way? Yes, actually, Mammoth P is one second, I'll get the cat out of it.
An excellent thing, but Steve's going to tell you about it when he deals with his cat there. Yeah. We love Mammoth P.
Yes, we love Mammoth P. In fact, Colin Bell was on the show not that long ago. Colin Bell was on the show just a couple of weeks ago. I just saw him. I talked to him last week, actually. In person. So, he's a great guy. And Mammoth P, honestly, is one of the best products I've seen for aquaponics in general. We did a bunch of testing with it back in the aquaponics source back before Mammoth P was even a product. I think this is even before Grow Certa was even registered as a company. Way back when he was just a student at CU, if memory serves me correctly. And, I'm dating myself now. We actually found that it was one of the largest nutrient increasers of any microbial product we ever tested at the aquaponic source, and it made a huge difference in the bioavailability of phosphorus in particular. It had increased anywhere between 30 and 50% the bioavailability of phosphorus, and is a great safe microbial that you can put into any aquaponic system, be it lettuce or cannabis. It really is a good one. In particular, I really like it to put it into mineralization tanks. So rather than putting it, just dosing, thousands of gallons or hundreds of gallons, put it in your mineralization system. You're going to have an offline mineralization tank where you're going to brew up your fish waste, put it in there and let it unlock that fish waste and let it unlock the phosphorus where the fish waste actually is, and then mineralize that and put that back in the system afterwards. And that's really going to give you the best bang for your buck with the Mammoth P and the best application in aquaponics. Marty, are you back yet? I guess Marty's still playing Kid Aggro. What are some of the things that you've learned, Mr. Green Jeans, along the way with the aquaponics?
Yeah, my only experience. I mean, I've always been an avid fish keeper. I love fish. I used to belong to the International Betta Congress, breeding those things, and I was into guppies and live bears and stuff when I was a little kid. So I've always loved fish and stuff. And I think the first my first experience with it was running a DWC bucket. I think this was, I want to say, sometime in the early 2000s maybe. And I was curious to see how I thought to try DWC. But I didn't really want to, and I didn't even know what kind of, Kool-Aid nutrients and stuff to use. So, but at the same time, I had a giant fish tank full of of goldfish, like a bunch of big fancy goldfish, which, eat a lot of food and poop a lot. So the water, all I did, I just ran the entire, I grew a plant all the way from beginning to harvest, just changing out my goldfish water into the TWC setup. And it worked brilliantly. I mean, it worked really amazing. I had probably some of the usual problems with DWC that, it's when the roots get super filling with a big 5-gallon bucket, fill up the thing. It's harder to get a lot of oxygen to the roots. Obviously, higher temperatures are not good, things like that. But I was able to understand all that stuff anyways, because I already, done a bunch of fish, love fish tanks and everything like that. So, but yeah, so ever since then, I mean, and I was surprised that people weren't doing it. It was years later that I probably saw the first little aquaponic setup at a cannabis convention, going to at a vendor's show. And, it's a long time later that I first saw. So actually, aquaponics is, for me, it's, relatively new thing. Although, of course, my grandmother, organic gardener, she was always trying to get my fish water because I had, tons of fish tanks and everything. She was always getting the fish water and putting it on her favorite plants and everything, So I think the idea of aquaponics has been around a long time. Just people haven't really fleshed it out like you guys are doing, until really the last 20 years, I guess you'd have to say. It's just recent, and maybe that's a little generous, maybe more like only 15 years. But yeah, man, I would really love to, if I was going to do kind of a commercial thing and, anywhere where I was a greenhouse type thing, I would use aquaponics, because it's basically, to me, it looks like it's kind of like it's similar, it's another water growing method. I mean, you can't say hydroponics, but it's hydro growing type of a system, but it's got the advantage of being organic. And the problem, with those things is that the idea that you can control a bit of your environment and, feed the plant exactly what it needs and this and that, it's not really, that's kind of a pipe dream, it's not really possible. It's really much more complex system than that. And, any organic gardening methods, the reason why, we say the science of organic gardening as opposed to the religion of organic gardening. The science of organic gardening is actually probably extremely complex. I mean, we try to learn a lot of it, obviously, but since it is, an organic system, there's a bunch of it that's sort of beyond our understanding. We just go, well, those friendly bugs and those guys, those microbes in there, they're helping out, they're doing. I mean, that's basically, that's what, that's what I think aquaponics is. It's basically organic water culture. Which means less work, the translation of organic, less work, easier to manage, more, basically you should be getting definitely higher quality and possibly bigger yield for whatever it is you're growing. And yeah, that's what I think. That's my experience with aquaponics. Certainly not as extensive as you guys, but.
Well, you used to tell it when you first started coming on the show, didn't you tell us how you had a nice pond and some really nice aquaculture and used to water your plants with just the pond water?
Exactly.
Yeah, that was cool.
I was talking more about about just a big biofilter, and I was throwing a lot of stuff in there, and it was way too dirty for fish. This is when after I took the fish out of it, and then I just filled up the I put in a whole lot more gravel until the water was only 2 or 3 inches deep at the top, and the thing was, you know, the entire tub was filled with gravel. So it's one big biofilter. And then I just started throwing stuff into it. I started throwing, you know, chicken manure and compost and things into it just to see if the biofilter could, once it was established, to see if it could eat those things. And it did. And the result was very, very strong, you know, ultra potent compost water, compost tea, which I assume, you know, in the beginning, when you first throw something like chicken manure in there, oh my God, you have basically an ammonia bloom, but you really won't get that if you have a well-established you know, biofilter. So, and then all that ammonia that's what gets, you know, eaten up and turned into nitrates and nitrites, which are obviously plant, you know, food. And so, yeah, you can make this kind of concentrated plant food that with a backyard biofilter like that. But the thing that I really, and I want to get back into experimenting with that more, but I still have a bunch of it that I made that I haven't finished using up yet, is charcoal. Well, I was taking hardwood charcoal and putting it into the pond basically, and waiting for it to sink, and then taking it out and crushing it up and putting it in the plant mix. So it's kind of activating it or deactivating it, as it were. I was wondering, like, what activated charcoal, right? So when you, I'm assuming that it was absorbing more than just the water. It was probably absorbing certain things out of the water, like the nitrates and the nitrites and other organic compounds and things like that, probably getting sucked into the charcoal. And so, yeah, so that's like sort of activated biochar, basically. You're making activated biochar. Now, there's definitely no science on you know, I have no way to back this up as in scientific claim or anything. But you can kind of tell intuitively that, oh yeah, that would work. And anyway, you should soak charcoal before you, if you're going to use a lot of hardwood charcoal, right? You can just buy, you know, regular, you know, and just smash it up. And it's basically, you know, you have to make sure you don't get the briquettes, not the ones that have the petroleum in them, but real, you know, true hardwood charcoal. They sell it, you know, for barbecuing, for a nice high quality barbecuing. I mean, I guess you could get really fancy. You can buy Japanese bincho charcoal, you know, or something like that. But I don't think you really need it. And I think the hardwood charcoal is probably, I haven't seen a cheaper source of biochar, but maybe there is one. I don't know. Maybe you can correct me on that, Steve. I don't know if there. So, you know, I just hardwood charcoal. Buy it right down the at Home Depot. And yeah. And so if you are going to use charcoal in your mix, which you can use a lot, I think we had a guest here one day who was claiming that you could use probably up to 50%. I forget what his name was. It was an Australian guy, one of the people we interviewed on the show. But I wouldn't doubt that you could use 50% charcoal. You can grow plants, enjoy a lot of charcoal. But yeah, if you do use charcoal, you got to definitely pre-wet it, because it will soak up a lot of water. You know, if you don't water it well enough. So
well, what happens is if it's really not charged, if it's not charged, it'll start absorbing nutrients.
Anyways, exactly. It's going to absorb nutrients out of there anyways. That's exactly right. So, but it means if you do have charcoal in there, you could throw in a lot more nasty organics that would normally piss off the roots, you know, create create a really, and I'm not talking about aquaponics, I'm talking about regular like container growing or growing in the ground or something like that. If you had if you threw a lot of, you know, chicken manure or something like that in there, be real hot, the roots would get all pissed off. But if you had a bunch of charcoal in there, you could probably get away with. So ingredients like charcoal would allow you to use more concentrated kinds of organic, nutritive organics in your mix. So you could experiment.
That'd make it definitely good for a compost, a custom style compost. Then
there you go. Yeah, yeah, because it kind of
use manure. Yeah,
it kind of slows things down. I think it kind of keeps it cool. Maybe it's almost has like a cooling effect, which sounds kind of weird because charcoal is a product of something burnt. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, that's that's all I know about that.
So what have you learned about breeding? You know, along the different episodes that we've done, we've had quite a few different breeders on. And,
oh yeah,
you know, quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've learned that, oh man, this has been great, you know, being on the show. It's just incredible. I've learned how important, you know, the question of you keep asking it, Steve, but the reason why is because it's real hot button issue, the importance of how to choose a male plant. That's really, everyone wants to know that. So, and I've of course given it a lot of thought, but now I'm giving it a lot more thought more recently because of, you know, it does seem to be a really critical question. I think one of the interesting things, the reason why the realization of that is that we've been through a long period where with a lot of breeders making, or seed sellers and stuff making feminized seeds. And feminized seeds are really cool actually, and they definitely have their use, but you often don't need, for example, you don't need to plant very many of them. If you know, they're generally very uniform, you know, so they're not exactly like a little army of clones, but they're similar enough that, you know, four or five plants is going to show you the whole span of whatever's going on, pretty much. You know, if you planted 10, you'd probably be sorry. You'd be like, oh, what did I do this for? So, but you know, the males, of course, you know, cannabis is dioecious, right? So it's got the two different, you know, set of chromosomes over on the male and a set of chromosomes over on the female, and that ensures a lot of, you know, a lot of variability with each new seed batch made, you know, regular, not non-self-pollinated. And I think we're coming out of a period where everybody's realizing, and there's also been a backlash. A lot of breeders say, well, I don't like to use feminized seeds for breeding. And that could be because of a fear of a lot of them having been made by, from hermaphrodites. So in other words, the not legitimate silver nitrate or, you know, some method, stressor method of making a female produce male flowers, but just taking, you know, random, so that, you know, it's probably given feminized seeds a bad name, but I definitely think they have their use. But I think that's why one of the reasons why we're coming back, and a lot of breeders and a lot of regular growers are now sort of looking at realizing the importance of using males and female, you know, going regular breeding, because the ultimate goal always is to keep on getting better. You know what I mean? Or at the very least to halt progress at a certain point. Because it is true, sometimes you find these certain traits that for whatever reason skip generations and things like that. And so, and maybe you're there in your generation 4 or 5 or something. And, you know, it's good to stop at that point, take clones of this and clones of that, and keep on cranking new seeds of the combination of that, because that's the nice place to stop it. So maybe that's what you want to do. But in general, you're trying to improve, you're looking to get things better, you know, with each, I mean, that's the whole reason to breed. is to focus on a certain number of traits that you like and steer towards that, you know. So, and really you can't do that, you know, by using self-pollination, feminized seeds and things. You know, you have to use males. And males are really, males are also more likely, I think, just like males of everything, they're more likely to be over on the side of the bell curves. They can be more extreme. A lot of times you have 100 plants. Very often the most extreme plant in that group is a male. You know, it's extreme maybe in weird way too, maybe not necessarily a desirable way, you know. So, but then other times maybe a very desirable way. It seems like the males, they vary more in most kinds of seed batches. There's more really good ones, there's more really sort of bad ones, whereas most of the females are pretty good. You know what I mean? That's what you often see out of 100 seeds. You know, you often see that scene. So yeah, males are really cool. We need to keep the boys around in the breeding, and I'm glad everybody's getting back into thinking about that, talking about that. We were talking about, me and Steve were talking about it the other night at dinner, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I was saying that that's one of the best reasons to have a true strain, a true inbred strain, is because a male from that is, you know, maybe the best choice to make a cross with something unrelated, which sometimes you have to do. You have a female clone, you have a select female clone, you don't have any other plants in the family related to her, you just have her. You want to do something with that, and so you have to make an outcross. And there, the choice of that male is really very important, you know, because that's going to set the tone for everything further down from that cross. So choice of that male is critical. And yeah, probably the best way to ensure that you're making a good choice is to have one from a true breeding strain already, because that male is going to, I don't know the proper terms and things to use. What I say is it represents, you know, a male from a family. It represents, he's going to, you know, influence the traits of that family. And that's good. And of course, and all the other things secondarily that we've always talked about, many other breeders and seed makers have pointed out, looking, you know, choosing the more vigorous ones, the stem rub, the smells. It's incredible how much you can smell on a plant. You know what I mean? You can smell the soul of a plant, you know, just by rubbing on the stem, and you can absolutely tell how it's going to influence. All those things, of course, are very important. But, you know, knowing he comes from a good family, knowing he comes from a pedigree. So what would be a male that you wouldn't use? Well, supposing you had done something recently with a very recent wild hybridization, maybe with a landrace and a Pakistani hash plant or something like that, and some sativa landrace. And then you're in, you know, then you did something else, maybe, or, you know, these are the seeds you've got. If that's the case, then, you know, maybe the F1, maybe some of the males, but still you would definitely have to progeny test those. And with the F2s, those would be really tricky, because they're going to be, that's where you're going to see a lot of variation. And, you know, that's where if you're going to try and, you know, of course, a good male out of that group of F2s might be fantastic. It might be really exactly what you're looking for. But you would definitely want to go with some kind of progeny testing and things like that. And if you don't know, if you didn't make the original cross, if you just got these seeds, you know, from someone else, and you don't know how to look at them, then maybe stay away from a male from that batch. You know what I mean? That just sounds like a recipe for disaster. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Why don't you explain to the, since we're on a Q&A thing, why don't you explain a little bit about, so some people that haven't got into breeding understand a little bit more about progeny testing?
Oh, I just meant progeny testing. Yeah, it means growing out the results of those. So yeah, I mean, it's always wonderful to do with that with males. So you would collect the pollen of 3 or 4 or 5 different, your select males that you think are good. And you're going to pollinate different branches of their sisters with that pollen, and you're going to mark each one of those. So you're going to be in their hand pollinating it with a brush, and you're going to mark each one of those branches, and with the number of that, saying that that's the number of male. What I do is I write on, I take a piece of masking tape and write a little note on the piece of masking tape and wrap it around the base of the branch there. And that could be trouble if some really, short little node plants and things like that. But so you may have to modify your methods there. But so basically what you're doing, and then you're going to collect all those, separate seeds and keep them categorized, grow a few of them out, 4 or 5, 6 of them out. And that's going to be enough of each one of the results of those males. And, that's a really fantastic, it seems like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's really worth it. It really ensures, it takes the guesswork out of breeding, because that's exactly what you're doing. You'll be able to tell from, 5 seeds, 5 plants of each one of those, which one is the most suitable one. He's the best one to cross with this female, So
excellent.
That's, that it sounds like a lot of, and it really is only just, when you're doing it there, and it isn't really a lot of work, because it's really, it's heavy lifting. It's really, it's valuable, you know what I mean? It's worth the extra time. It sounds like it would be extra work, but it's not. Even if you just do 2 or 3 males, 2 males, don't even do 5 your first time. Just take 2, you got these 2. This one smells great. That one's big and, beefy. So boom, let's find out which one of these 2 is the best. And yeah, it's not hard. Anybody got any more questions? What are we talking about? Breeding, true breeding. Grows A says, I wasn't even watching. A said, plant turned Hermy. Gonna get the seeds. I'm gonna press it. True hybridization, true vigor. Yeah, hybrid vigor. First F1 hybrid. When you first do make a cross between 2, the more unrelated the 2 lines are. And that's one of the, they use that horticulturally, that method. I mean, in agriculture, that's how, it's spinach and everything. A lot of these things are F1 hybrids. The result of it is not only, so there's a thing called heterosis. Heterosis is hybrid vigor, which means, generally the plants, the results are stronger and bigger, faster growing than either of the parent lines that they came from. And it's called heterosis. And that's a really good thing. And the other thing about F1, if the true, now you gotta have 2 actual IBLs, 2 actual stable lines in order to create an F1 line which is lacking in variation, which is more uniform. So they like that in agriculture. Like obviously they want a whole bunch of little spinach plants which are all exactly the same size, so they can all be picked at the same time. And and we in our home gardens don't usually actually want that. It's usually more convenient to growing carrots just to pick a couple at a time. Beets, beets are a pain in the ass. you want to be able to leave them in the ground. You know, you don't want to all of a sudden have a whole pile of beets. But commercially, of course, they do. They do want to, you know, have this uniformity and everything like that. So yeah, playing around with that with cannabis breeding, it could be fun. There would be I don't know of anybody who's ever made true F1 in terms of by taking two you know, real IBLs like that and you know, making, I haven't seen, I may, that's not exactly true. I mean, of course we have all, but yeah, cannabis, it seems to be pretty variable. Maybe you're always going to get that variation. Maybe it wouldn't. No, you know what? I have a feeling, all right, now I'm totally thinking out loud here. I'm sorry, but I have a feeling with the right male and the right female. So with the progeny testing, you can find, I mean, like I was talking about the other week, you can make stability with a double hybrid. I've seen it before. I've seen, you know, an amazingly stable seed line as a result of crossing one thing with another thing and then out crossing again to another thing. And just by using the exact right plants, you can get, so yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Breeding plants, everybody's got to get into it. Now that we're all, and this is the best thing about everybody being out in contact with each other. This is the whole thing that was so bad about the, you know, for us, the guys that have been doing it for so long back in the day, was the no communication, was the inability for us to even talk to each other, you know. But now the possibility to be involved in, you know, much bigger breeding schemes, group breed. I remember it was during, it was sometime during the 70s, wasn't it? And we do the, it was Rodale. Rodale was a project to breed white-seeded amaranthus. And they sent out seeds to, you know, hundreds of volunteers, people who read Organic Gardening magazine. And, you know, we all looked for white-seeded amaranth. So yeah, group breeding projects, man. That's where we're getting to now with cannabis, and it's gonna take off. We're gonna together we're gonna breed some amazing amazing genetics in the next 10 or 20 years. It's really, you think the last 40 years have been good for cannabis genetics, and they have been. They have been really great, but the next 40 are going to be really, because cannabis is really variable and it's just getting going, you know. It's nothing like corn or something like that. People are worried, people often, you know, they're paranoid of inbreeding depression and stuff with cannabis. I don't even know if it's possible. Man, I'm growing some cherry bomb now. I don't know, it was F13 when I was trying to just start distributing out in the early 2000s. I'd already inbred it exclusively with no crosses and nothing for 13 generations. I don't even know what it's at now that's been with Gas and Swami and these guys, you know. But it's, you know, incredibly big, healthy, gigantic, healthy plants. You know, it's like, oh my God. So yeah, I don't think there's any danger of inbreeding depression in cannabis. There is danger of breeding yourself into the corner, and that just means making the wrong choices. You know what I mean? And losing shit that you had before that you liked. And everyone's experienced that. I did that. You can't. It's, you know, you have to. This is why I'm talking up progeny testing. This is really the only way to avoid, especially in the early generations after something like a cross. You make a cross, a hybridization between two things that are really unrelated. You really got to watch out the choices that you make in those first couple generations. You can easily lose the very traits that you liked. And, you know, that's the real thing of breeding, is focusing on many different traits all at one time. the more things you notice. And that's for me was it would have been a lot better to be able to talk to people and be in communication with other breeders and other growers more, throughout the decades. For me, I had, kind of regret having to figure out a lot of it on my own, because whenever you talk to anyone, they turn you on to something, turn you on to something new that you hadn't noticed or seen. And cannabis plants are incredibly complex. So viewing, smelling, seeing, tasting, feeling, understanding all the different traits that can be, obviously all these can be manipulated genetically. And that's exactly what, as you start to get better at breeding, it's because you're looking at more and more and more traits. You don't let anything go by the wayside. You know what I mean? Keep it all in there. Yeah. And that requires, memory. I mean, you have to focus on, you have to remember what it was you started out to do, and if you're not getting what not saying you have to be like Beethoven. I mean, you don't have to throw away a month's worth of work. That's a shit. Or in breeding case, it's generally throwing away maybe a year or a couple of years worth of work. But, it is important to be honest with yourself about whether you're achieving what your goals are. So it's really good. There's where writing things down. And I was paranoid to write. I always took notes because I had always done that with guppies and with bettas and with everything else that I bred. But when I started taking notes with cannabis in New York City in the mid 70s, I was getting a little paranoid, you know what I mean? And I, every year or two, I'd rip up my notes and throw them away, and then I kept on trying to figure out ways to memorize, so I had labels would trigger my memory, and I'd try to commit things to memory. But I don't recommend people to do this at all. I recommend you write everything down. You get your journal and you write down all your goals, write down all the traits that you can see and observe and smell and everything. Because then you'll learn much faster than I did. Anyway, how's that for a rant on breeding? Any more questions?
Is Martin back at all, or did he get children? I grow.
Boiling beets, yeah.
Yeah,
like beets. Beets is the first of the beginning of Beethoven. Speaking of Beethoven, right? Isn't that's the beginning of? Okay. Yeah.
I think we're gonna wrap the show up. I'm starting to get pretty beat from the antibiotics, so. We had a really good show. I apologize for being briefer than normal, but such is life this week. And we'll try to do some kind of live event Thursday or Friday for those of you guys that are around. Maybe even Saturday night we'll do a little bit of a live thing as well. We'll see what's going on. And then again, please check it out. If you want to come check out the 4-day Aquaponic Cannabis class, you can check out more information at apmjclass.com. If you want to come, check out the class. If you are showing up and paying in person, please email me and tell me you're coming, so that I know that you're coming, so that I know how many booklets and how much food to make. It really helps me out. And much love to Shango Los, the awesome interview over at Shaping Fire. Check out Marty over at AP Meds. How do people find you there, Roger?
You can find me at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com, on Instagram, and under Roger Latewood, and Facebook. And I do monitor. I don't go in there a lot at this point because I've been pretty busy. But you can, if you post something at me, I can see it on the cannabis growers group that Steve and Marty have, or I'm not, well, it's a whole bunch of people that actually have that group, but and I do have an account at Cannabis, but I just hadn't had time to get over there and do anything with it. So shout out to I think it's JR, right, that has Cannabis.
Yep.
Yeah, JR Token. He's got cannabis to let you get totally absorbed into cannabis as opposed to all the stuff that you have to wade through on Instagram. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Cannabis
much
friendly.
love to Cannabis for giving us a place for cannabis growers to have without getting harassed or worried about getting taken down. Definitely check that out if you're looking for an alternative place that's just all cool cannabis homies. And what about you, Mr. Green Jeans? How do people find you? How do people get seeds if they want to get some of that wonderful cherry bomb?
Oh yeah, greenjeansgarden.com. Let me see. Don't I have a? Oh yeah, there it is. I just put the link into YouTube. And yeah, thanks a lot. Just email me there. I got to get the shopping cart up and everything, but things have been going good. I'm cranking a lot of seeds. So yeah, buy my seeds. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's great questions.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a lot of great questions, and sorry for the show being a little brief. I'm pretty tired from being sick. So we'll catch you guys again next week again, or sometime later this week. Again, you can check us out at check me out at Ponics on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all the different places, and we'll be back again soon. And yeah, thanks for listening. Sorry, I'm really tired in the beds. Cheers, guys. Much love.
Have a great week.